father worked in a jute mill in Bauria, and that's where I grew up. It's not one of the top cities that you hear of when you're growing up in India. We were about 3 hours from Kolkata. We used to commute 6 hours every day just to get to school. And it was quite a journey. I feel like everybody has their own struggles. I had mine. Growing up, even staying in Calcutta used to be, or Kolkata as we now call it, used to be the biggest dream that one can have. And so for very long, all that I wanted to do in my life was just, get a house in Kolkata. Nowhere did I think that I'll be able to, move to the US, see the world, then move to Canada, be able to build 3 homes. But I guess that's life. So I did my CA in India, worked here for about 2 years, did my articleship, worked for 2 years post-qualification. Then I moved to the States to be with my husband. Now, if you're on a dependent visa in the US, everybody knows the struggle. Nobody wants to hire you. So I had a very, very tough time. You can probably hear me speak now and you're like, okay, your communication skills are good. But when I initially moved to the States, I was so poor in my English that I couldn't even order food in a restaurant. I was trying to order food once and I couldn't, and that's when I ran crying and I just ran outside. And I was like, something has to change, something has to give. And that was probably the time that I started working on myself. It took me a lot to be able to find an employer who would be willing to sponsor. And that's how my journey started. The first job led to the next job that had me travel the world. I went to about 30 countries in a year and a half. And then we moved to Canada. I was able to then move to investment banking. I'm technically employed, but I'm on a break for maternity. Canada has amazing laws. And that's how it was. I just, I hope that I'm always able to tell people that it doesn't matter where you come from, as long as you work hard and you show up every day, you will get to where you want to be. I think the biggest tip that I want to give is to chase the right kind of people. And that's a mistake that I did very early on. I was so hell-bent on just getting package. That's the term they used back then for compensation. So the CTC really mattered to me. It wasn't anything else. Maybe it was the conditioning, maybe it was the environment that I grew up in. We weren't from a family where we could afford a lot. There was no way I could take a break, for example. So of course the compensation mattered to me the most. But I did not really care about, one, what kind of role is being offered, 2, what kind of people I would be working with. And people, they are the most important thing. I'm an immigrant, and I think I've been able to do relatively well in my life is because I met both kinds of people, right and wrong. The right ones taught me how to do things in my career right, and the wrong ones taught me what not to do. So I do think that, getting to the right kind of people is extremely important. And obviously you're not going to always gravitate towards the right set of people, but please be mindful about, one, what kind of people you're going to be dealing with, because most of your life you're going to be spending in an office, in a corporate world, if you choose to work. So you really want to work with people who make you feel good about yourself. And then second, please be very well aware of the role that you're signing up for. It so happens, it's a very normal phenomena that I see going around, and it hasn't changed in the last 10 years of me being a CA, that people sign up for a role without really reading the job description, the responsibilities, especially when you're on CA campus, where you get a lot of companies and everybody's so focused on getting into, I don't want to take the big names, but I want to get into the highest paying company. Nobody really looks into what is the role, what is the location being offered, what is the growth perspective. So please ask the most important questions. What is the growth trajectory in your role? And it's very normal to ask questions in an interview. Keep in mind that interviews or any job conversation that you're having is a two-way street. You want to get hired, but they also want to hire you. So respect yourself for the hard work that you've put in for your CA. And I think this is a more generic topic, probably applies to everyone, but please respect the hard work that you've put in for your education. And then ask questions. Look up the role and responsibilities. Ask who you're going to be working with. Check the location. Ask for the growth trajectory. And don't blindly follow the numbers. I know we're chartered accountants, we're conditioned to always look at numbers. Don't always do that. That's a mistake I made. I think the biggest characteristic and something that I learned from my MD, I've learned from many people in my life, but my current MD, for example, I'm on maternity break for 1.5 years. That's a law in Canada. And even though I'm on break and she's my MD, every week I get a text message from her. I don't care how she remembers to send me a message. There were other people who also went on breaks. She'll always send me a message every week, and this is not somebody who has a lot of time. I barely worked with her. I worked with people much junior to her. I was just a manager. There are 3 to 4 more levels of people between us. She sends me a text message every week, just checking in on how I'm doing, how my husband is doing. She schedules calls. That's a leader, because she's looking out for me even when I'm on a break for a year and a half. And I think when I interviewed with her, it was only a 5-minute conversation, but I knew that she would look out for me. So I think that's number one. Is the person looking out for you? Are they only in the questions you can see? The interview questions that she asked me was more about what do I want from the job and not what the job can get me. And I think you should always try to look for people who are looking out for you. Number two, try to give more. I've always, when I started working, I was always like, oh my God, how can I get home early? Not to say that, I wasn't working, like I was not working less hours. I was not trying to shortcut my role or my job. But I was always like, oh, like, can I just get at 7? If I can get home at 7 p.m. today, best day of my life. But that's not something that I would do right now. Right now, I think my hours don't matter. I'm focused on doing a good job. I think the best way to put it is commitment to excellence. I will not pick up a project that I cannot deliver 100% on, to the best of my ability, obviously. So I think try to look for people who can help you deliver your best. And obviously the fact that I love the people that I work with makes it easier that, I don't really care about the number of hours I'm clocking. And that being said, I just want to say, do not overwork, do not kill yourselves in the office. But at the same time, try to look for people who would teach you how to deliver your best, and you're not shortcutting. And I think third most important quality is people who always constantly remind you to upskill. I did my CA in India, but my career in India was only 2 years. I moved outside, and in the 6 to 7 years that I've worked outside of India, I've had 3 designations. That's only happened because I got the time, the mental space, the financial backing from my employers. All my respective employers were always okay to fund whatever I want to study. And by funding, I don't really mean just the money part of it. They knew I needed time off to study. They knew I needed time off to write the exams. So I think having a set of people like that, where you can talk about what your own personal growth will be like, that's important. So those would be the 3 qualities. I want to first state this, that it's not as difficult as it seems. That is number one. There are a lot of mistakes that I made, and in the last 2 years of creating content, I see people making the same mistakes, including some of my best friends who continue to make the same mistakes. So the number one thing is communication skills. Now, by that, I don't mean that you need to have flawless English, but I think you have to understand that communication is a two-way street. You have to communicate in a way that the other person, your audience, gets you. That could be gestures for all you know, but at the same time, it is a terminology. Now, the terminology for everything is different. I did not realize it until I moved to North America. Even in finance, for example, we use debtors and creditors, but there it's accounts payable and AR. So I remember I just kept saying debtors in this one interview, and they thought it's debt that I'm talking about, and they were like, okay, your technical skills are off. So something so basic like that, I think can really kill you in an interview. So one, get your communication skills together. Obviously, if you're good in English, it helps because it will help you become more confident, but I wasn't great when I started out. In fact, I was so bad that I remember people would very politely keep asking me, oh, could you repeat yourself? Oh, I didn't catch that. But it was now that I work with immigrants and I cannot kind of understand that's what I do, so I've come on the other side. So don't worry about not being fluent in English, But yes, if you're not somebody who's confident of their communication skills, go slow, talk slowly, take spaces, take pauses, and communicate in a language that your audience gets. Number two is consistency. You have to be consistent in your applications. And I think this beats everything else. People get frustrated after doing 50 job applications, and I've said this so many times. I had an Excel tracker when I moved to the US. I stopped tracking it after 1,000 applications. I kind of stopped tracking it, and I was like, there's no use of this. I still have that. It has more than 1,200 job applications that I did in 1 month because I had nothing else to do. So 1,200 job applications later, I had not heard from anyone, and I did 1 more month of that. So I probably crossed 2,000 applications, and 2,000 serious applications where I was updating my resume for every role, going through the ATS scan, tracker, all of that. And then I got a call from 2 places, both of which converted. So the ratio is probably not as high, and this is me talking of the US, where sponsorships are very, very difficult. When you're looking at a country like UK or anywhere in Europe or even in Canada or Australia in today's day, sponsorships do happen and the ratio is much higher. What you need is consistency. This is a numbers game. You apply to 10 jobs, and even if we consider a 1% conversion ratio, that is 0. You apply to 100, that becomes 1. You apply to 1,000 roles, that becomes 10. So like, keep in mind that this is just consistency. By no means is Indian education, not at par or subpar. I did not have any degree, so to say, to work in the States. I did not have any degree to even work in Canada, because by the time I moved to Canada, I had a US and an India degree. My CPA Canada came 1 week before I went on leave for for maternity. It's never about what degree you have. It is about, can you communicate your skills right, and are you consistent enough? And that's it. And these 2 things have changed the game for over 1,000 people that I've mentored in the last 2 years. I keep a highlight of success stories on my profile, but now we've actually seen so much in terms of increase that I kind of don't like posting it as often, because it just feels like others are not doing as well. If I'm watching that story, I'm probably not doing as well. But that's what's happening. A lot more of my colleagues have been able to move, juniors, seniors, peers. In terms of top countries, if I were to say, I think UK and Australia are the countries that are hiring the most in the fields of finance and a little bit in tech as well. Following that would be the European countries, the Western European countries. We could look at Germany, we could look at France, Netherlands, even Ireland for that matter. So bunch of opportunities, finance, and for a lot of people who don't know, I track the shortages that exist. Even in finance, it's not the banking industry that is doing the best. It's actually audit, accounts, all of these, the core finance functions that exist. They do well, and that's why we're seeing most number of shortages. So if you're a CA, this is a great time to be looking out for opportunities.
So as you mentioned about the finance sector, how can a young person looking for jobs, especially in the finance sector, go about the search?
I think first, make sure that you have a good LinkedIn presence. By that, I don't mean that you should be very active in posting and liking, but just make sure you have a good picture. A lot of people put selfies. If you can, invest in a professional headshot. That's a mistake that I made, and I actually had one of the recruiters that I worked with tell me that this is not a good picture. It won't fly in North America. So if you can, do that. If not, just take a picture against a white background. We have so many apps today. You could use any of those. Picture is extremely important. I think there was a Forbes study in 2016 where they found 80% of the job hires that were actually made through LinkedIn. It really mattered what their photos were. So you don't have to look pretty, but you should look like yourself, and you should have a professional photo that kind of shows your seriousness towards your attitude. Apart from that, have a good bio. A lot of people don't take any effort in putting that out. Keep in mind that LinkedIn is your resume. It's nothing less of that, because anybody can scan your profile. You applying to jobs, you can only apply to so many jobs. But if somebody is going through LinkedIn and they kind of come across your profile, your profile can get so many more views. I think if you just track your stats, for example, just so I know I'm a creator, but even then, my profile will probably get in 90 days, it'll get about 40,000 views, unique views. There's no way that in 90 days I can apply to 40,000 jobs. And most of the views that I get are obviously from recruiters. So by just putting a right profile out there, you have applied, so to say, to so many roles because these 40,000 people have looked at your profile. So that's very important. Apart from that, making sure that you're not putting a lot of personal information out there. A good resume is obviously important. Don't put your marital status, your address, passport available, all of that. Keep applying through LinkedIn. That is the best place. About 70% of the jobs are not even hosted, and there's a whole background story to it, but they're not even hosted on the company's website or anywhere. It happens mostly through LinkedIn. And the best way to do it is to follow recruiters. So recruitment agencies is a thing outside where they don't charge you any money. They make money about 15 to 25% of your base salary if you get placed. So they have a lot of incentive in getting you placed. So you can look up firms. A lot of the recruitment firms specialize in different fields. So if you're in finance, for example, if you're a CA, look up finance recruitment agencies in different countries that you're interested in, and then go to their pages on LinkedIn, and there's an employees section. So just go and follow those people. You don't have to connect because they don't have the time to talk to you. They have to make sure they're getting candidates placed because that's how they make money. So follow them, and they keep posting roles. And if you come across a good role that they've posted, just send them an email and apply for it. That is a tried and tested method. I've done it multiple times. My current role was actually through LinkedIn itself. So I saw the job on LinkedIn. I applied for it. This actually happened the last time I was in India, and I was heading home, and I had a lot of time on hand to kill in the layover. And I saw this job, which is, I'd been seeing it for 90 days, and I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get hired in an investment bank. And about 2 weeks later, I had the offer in my hand. So a lot can happen, and also about 80% of the jobs that you see on LinkedIn are not posted anywhere else. So this is the most important platform, and you have to be good out here. I've given you a lot of tips and tricks, and apart from that, just make sure you're consistent. Don't give up. I've had people tell me, I applied for 50 jobs and then 50 jobs, and it did not work out. Like I said, the conversion ratio is low, so this is a numbers game. You just need to keep putting yourself out there. I think the biggest challenge that people would face is the culture gap. I know it because I'm now on the other side of the table, and I work a lot with the Indian team now. And I personally feel like, I feel a sense of familiarity, but even I feel a gap. And that's because I've been working in North America for too long. So it's not just the communication gap, like something very simple. I think timeliness, for example. If you commit to delivering a report on Wednesday, I know that if I'm working with a certain set of teams, which includes India, I know that report would probably not even come until Friday, and I'll have to chase them. But I know that if a colleague of mine in Toronto has committed to that, it'll come on Monday or Tuesday. So I think it's just those culture gaps. I have faced this personally, and I felt it was very isolating because everyone else, when you move outside, you're going to be working more with the locals and lesser with immigrants, right? And even when you're working with immigrants, those immigrants come from all parts of the world. They're not just coming from India. So the locals, which you're going to be working with, will have a certain kind of a culture work-wise. So the locals will have, their own culture, which you would not feel that you're getting to become a part of. I felt that for very long, not realizing that the problem also lies, on my end, that I was not trying to be a part of their culture. So, of course, like nobody's saying do not give up your identity, but you have to be open to accepting new cultures, understanding that I was very stubborn at one point, this is who I am, take it or leave it. That's not how things work. You have to be fluid, and you should want to, I think the other thing that I struggled with was just commitment to excellence. I always wanted to leave the job at the right time, not realizing that, I could leave at 3 p.m. also if I did a good job. on any given day. And then if the job is not well done or it's not timely done, then I should stick around till 9. So I think the culture gap is probably one of the biggest, and it can be isolating. So seek help on that. And if you find other immigrants, go and talk to them. It helps the most. Most of my user base is between 25 and 35. And when I ask them, why do you want to kind of move outside? I think the first thing that I always hear is environment. And in environment, not just the environment that we surround ourselves with, but also the environment that we live in just physically. So whether it's your mental health, whether it's the working hours, whether it's a set schedule, whether it's the environment, clean air, water, all of that is what I see most people want to move out for. And I know I've spoken a lot about not shortcutting, etc., but there are no days that I've worked on weekends in years. And I work investment banking, which is extremely busy. So I have colleagues who'll die Monday to Friday, maybe, work as many hours as you want. But even on year end, we don't do weekends. So it's just things like that we really have a balance, that even in your busiest parts of the year, of course, if you're traveling and all of that, it's different, but even in your busiest times of the year, you're not going to be working insane days and hours. There are always set breaks. Mental health wise, I think I've done better there, and I've seen most people do better because there's a very clear bifurcation between work and personal life. Your colleagues are not your friends. That's the thing I miss about India, but it has its own pros and cons. And the pro is that work is never personal. And apart from that, obviously clean air, water. I cannot emphasize how important it is, especially as you age, as I'm getting older. I feel like that is definitely, because I can see my own parents, my mom, my in-laws, they all want to visit us longer, not because they love us. I mean, of course they love us. They don't have their circle there. They don't have their social circle. They miss that. But they just feel that they're better off health-wise. They always are able to lose a lot more weight. They can stay more active. They can go on long walks. They can run. It's not, the pollution levels are not as high. The water is always good. You're not going to end up with any kind of sickness here and there randomly. So that's definitely one of the reasons why a lot of my audience wants to move outside. And the last reason being financially. If you're smart about investing and saving, this can be lucrative. I know a lot of people talk about taxes being very high in the West, but one, you get a lot for those taxes, and two, in real numbers, they're not high. You have to compare it to what you're paying in India, and it's probably going to be 1 or 2 or maybe 5% at max higher, but you're going to get a lot more for that. And I just feel that immigration is tough. It's not for everyone, but it can be, for me, it's been the biggest teacher in my life. Everything that I've done, I think that has been the game changer always.